Okay, so this week we're back to the Frost Paladin. The Frost Paladin is a tanky warrior that does mostly physical damage, but also can use ice to kind of create situations where enemies get knocked down by tripping over them, and do a little bit of damage with Icebreaker later in the game when you get it at level 16. I really like playing it because it has a good mix of survivability and damage, although it's not as good generally as the Eternal Warrior. It's still really good, and I think it probably adds more to a party than the Eternal Warrior does because of the healing capabilities. Skills like Guardian Angel are really fun to play with, and I think, not too many builds can utilize them as well. Okay, so this is the level 9 version. You can see the first thing I do here, which is pretty standard, is Bull Rush through, get all three of the guys there. I use Tentacle Lash on the Archer to make sure it can't hit me. Then I go ahead and cast Rain and Global Cooling to freeze those dogs and create that sort of icy surface that makes walking on difficult for enemies. You want to make sure that you have nails in your boots when you're using this build. That way you don't slip yourself or fall at all, which would be kind of embarrassing. Alright, we got the knockdown we were hoping for there when the enemy slipped on the ice. So I go ahead and use Whirlwind. Unfortunately, I somehow missed the totem, so I don't get that Executioner AP that I really need. And that's the end of that turn. So one nice thing you'll notice right here is that by creating this icy, watery surface, the summoner is actually summoning his totems in the water, which is making them do magical damage. Which is great because, I don't have a whole lot of physical armor. Physical armor is, you're more at risk for taking status effects. And because of living armor, I can regenerate magical armor, so I'd rather have enemies hitting into my magical armor as long as, they're not all hitting into it. Okay, so I go ahead and use Winter Blast, which is a skill I don't really have in my skill build, put on for this fight. And you may consider putting it on early game. It's not going to perform real well because of the low intelligence you have. But it is good at freezing enemies, which is what I'm primarily using it here for, because enemies have very low magic armor. And then I'm trying to figure out what to do, so I go ahead and pop Skin Graft here to give me back some skills, use Adrenaline, hit with a Whirlwind to get that execution bonus, and then use Winter Blast again in order to freeze some more enemies, and then pass my turn. So unfortunately I get crippled by the summoner there, but I do get an attack of opportunity on the Archer, finishing him off, which is great, so I don't take any damage from him. On my turn, I go ahead and decide to use Blitz Attack to take out that totem, giving me the extra AP from Executioner. Then I use Tentacle Lash on the dog down there at the bottom. I was trying to calculate if I could get through that armor or not. Luckily I did. Was able to set Atrophy on him so he couldn't attack me. And then, because I have actually killed something, I use Bone Cage to give me back some physical armor in case that warrior, or summoner, tries to knock me down on his turn. On my turn, I go ahead and use Battering Ram to go through all three of the guys, and I get the two dogs knocked down there. And then I decide to use Battle Stomp to try and do some more damage. Probably should have used Bull Rush there, but then I go ahead and use Bull Rush afterward. Kind of did that in the wrong order. It would have been better to do Bull Rush. A little bit of critique on my own gameplay. Because, I probably could have got the same effect with Bull Rush. It also sets bleeding, and then, if there was any armor left, I wouldn't have wasted Battle Stomp and not gotten a CC. Alright, so I'm in a bit of a bad spot. You can see I got knocked down there, so I lost a turn, which is extremely unfortunate. Normally, you'd have Deflective Barrier and Shields Up in your build if you're one-handing, so that's a lot less likely to happen. Again, I'm using a two-hander that has Frozen and Shield on it, so I'm not quite as tanky as I would be, but you can see I actually survived, partly because I had a guy knocked down, and also because the totem is shooting for water damage. So it's hitting into two different armor types. And you'll see that because I've killed enough things and because of the two different damage types they're dealing, that I'm actually able to recover from this. Which just sort of showcases the survivability of this build, and you know, the healing comes in super handy sometimes. Okay, the first thing I do on my turn here is heal myself naturally. Then I go ahead and use Whirlwind to kind of finish off the totems, get me that Executioner bonus. Luckily I get the dog too, so now it's just me and the Summoner. You can see I'm kind of calculating, doing some math here, trying to figure out how much damage I can deal. I decided to go with Bull Rush, which actually I think hits less than a regular attack, so it was probably not the wisest decision, but I thought to myself, you know, if I can get a lucky crit here, maybe I can set bleeding on this guy, which would be extremely useful. You know, because this is going to be kind of an endurance fight against this guy who's got a lot of health, and, you know, he can use shields up, so... and then I go ahead and use Adrenaline to give me some extra AP and hit him with a Tentacle Lash so that he doesn't knock me down again. Okay, so I recover some more health there, take out the totem with the Bull Rush, get bleeding on the Summoner, which is great, and then I don't really have a knockdown. I could do a regular attack. I'm worried he's going to try and knock me down or do something. So I actually go ahead and use Winter Blast here, which, you know, may or may not have been the best thing. But what I was thinking was, you know, if I can create some ice on the ground and maybe he tries to run away, or, you know, maybe he does a battering ram or whatever and he falls, then he'll be knocked down. So I was trying to create a scenario for him to slip. Okay, since I have Cleave on my weapon here, I go ahead and try and hit him and the totem in one swing, trying to get the Executioner bonus. Unfortunately, I miss the Summoner there, but the totem doesn't quite go down, so I got to hit with a second attack, which gets rid of the totem. And then I get that Executioner AP, and I go ahead and use Bone Cage, because I've killed several things now, to give me back some physical armor in case this fucker hits me again with that battering ram or cripple. Okay, so I go ahead and use battering ram here to get rid of the totem, set bleeding on the guy again. You can see I'm not really sure what to do afterward. I use Tentacle Lash, obviously, to you know, make it so he can't attack me, but then I'm like, do I battering ram him? Do I knock him down just to make sure he doesn't attack, even though it's kind of a waste of a CC because he's already has atrophy? I go ahead and use Armor of Frost just to buff my magic arm a little bit in case, you know, he summons another totem and it's shooting water damage. And then I just go ahead and hit him with a regular attack. Alright, so we're nearing the end here. Go ahead and use Bull Rush again. Can't count how many times I use that this fight. So good now. Then I use Battle Stomp to knock him down, even though I don't really need to. And then I just finish him off with a regular attack there. So you can see my health now is full, and at one point during the fight it was, you know, at like 30 or 40. So I was able to come all the way back from no health simply from a couple healing spells, which, you know, I only needed to use one. You know, Living Armor just keeps on, you know, healing me, having points of Necromancer healing me. I don't have as many as I do in the Infernal Warrior, but super useful. And, you know, Bone Cage, super lifesaver. Again, keep in mind that if you're playing with a sword and board setup, you're going to have much more armor. But you can see I was able to just kind of outlast the enemies there. I used Skin Graft early on to refresh my skills, but then I had a whole nother cycle of cooldowns after that. And this is kind of a longer fight than some of my other videos, because I just kind of had to outlast them, just keep healing, damaging, buffing, you know, and that's kind of the way it works when you're more of a tanky type build that can replenish armor. Also, you'll have gotten to see here that the ice damage, even though it's not really water damage isn't super useful for killing enemies, but it was able to keep enemies CC'd so that I could focus a target down and then move on to the next one. Now, it's harder to do when it's just one person, but in a party where there's other members stripping magic damage, you can kind of keep doing that, you know, global cooling, winter blast, etc., to just freeze a couple of targets, focus one down, freeze a couple of targets, focus one down, which is great. Okay, so this is the level 16 version of the build. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to record fresh footage because I was trying to clear storage space on my computer the other day, and I somehow deleted like all my saves after a certain point. Only those ones for some reason. I don't know how I did it. But, so I have to kind of play a bit to get back to where I am in the game, and when I went to make this video, I didn't have time to play to get all the way back. So this is some old footage that I recorded when I was making the Frost Paladin build. And the only reason I even mention that is because you're going to see that I can use Deflective Barrier with a two-hander, which you currently can't do. There was an item, a very special belt you could get that gave Deflective Barrier. Now, even though you have the belt, you can't use it unless you have a shield, so please take that into consideration, and I apologize. Okay, so first thing I do, enemies are very far away. Frost Paladins have tons of buffs, so I go ahead and buff up with Deflective Barrier. Again, if you are normally two-handing, you won't be able to do this, but if you're single-handing, you will. I use Armor of Frost to give me some more magic armor, and then I use Flesh Sacrifice to give me an extra AP. Keep in mind that if you lower your constitution when you do this, so if you're using a sword and shield, make sure you don't lower it below the threshold to use your shield or you'll unequip it, which is awful. And then I go ahead and use Enrage. So I kind of waste Enrage, sort of, in this part, because it'll actually last the turn you cast it and the turn after. But, you know, the downside is that if you cast it, you're usually only going to get like one swing on one turn. So I'm not losing out that much because I'm kind of getting ready for next turn where I can just blast the fuck out of them. On my turn here, I go ahead and use Whirlwind. I can only hit 2 targets, which is usually one more than I like to use it with. But whatever. And then I use Battle Stomp, and you can just see the devastating damage of these enraged attacks. I mean, it's freaking ridiculous. And look at the water damage. It's like 130 water damage on top of the 908 physical, which, you know, isn't really a big deal, except, you know, if they have very little magic armor, then maybe you use Rain and Global Cooling and freeze them all afterward, and you know, then go back to wailing away on them. Okay, I took a bit of damage there because that knockdown from the last turn actually missed that one dog, so he was able to get a couple of attacks on me. But then I go ahead and use Blitz Attack to hit 2 people. Get an Atrophy, actually, from proc on my weapon, which is great. And then I use Battering Ram to knock them all down. It's really important to keep this this red douchebag that's laying on the floor knocked down now in this fight if you do it now. Because he'll actually run up and taunt you through your armor, which makes this really hard to solo, so you want to make sure you keep that guy pinned down. Alright, my turn here. I'm looking at using Cleanse Wounds. Cleanse Wounds is great, and it's one of the... This is probably one of the few builds in the game that can actually use it successfully. It clears decay, so you can heal yourself with it and not kill yourself, which is why I was looking at using it. But instead, I decided to be a bit more aggressive, which is kind of the theme of this little encounter here. Cast Rain, use Global Cooling. I actually freeze one of the dogs with it. And then I use Icebreaker and just devastate the crap out of 2 of those guys and get rid of them. I just love the ability. It's just a fun ability in this build. It's one you don't use all that often. You don't get it until level 16. So you're not going to get it very early in the game. But it's really fun for just adding some burst magic damage for 1 AP. And you can see I get the Executioner bonus there. Note that Icebreaker doesn't scale with Intelligence, it only scales with Hydrosophist, which is one of the reasons we use it in this build, because, you know, it's not going to do more damage on a Cleric build than it will on this build. Really, the only way to do more damage with it is to increase Hydrosophist, like maybe a Titleist would do more, for example, but, you know, another tanky type build that uses Intelligence isn't gonna make it any stronger. Okay, so then I go ahead and use Cleanse Wounds there to get rid of that decay, heal me up. Replenish some magic armor as well, and then I just use Adrenaline and go ahead and all in this dude in the face and just cackle as I smash him to the ground. Okay, I only got 2 AP here. I go ahead and Phoenix Dive over to the ranged enemy, so in case he tries to move away, I get an opportunity to attack him, attack of opportunity, and it makes the dog have to move in order to get over to me, so he wastes some AP doing that as well. He hits me a couple times there, and then I just go ahead and use Whirlwind, finish off the ranged guy, and that's pretty much the end of the fight there. So you can see the Frost Paladin does substantial damage. This is not Lone Wolf again, this is a non-Lone Wolf build. And I'm not playing in Lone Wolf. You can see I have 3 party members, so even if I had the Lone Wolf talent, which I showed you I didn't, it wouldn't apply. It's just really versatile. I really like versatile builds. There are a few builds in the game that do multiple damage types okay. Juggernaut is one of them. Terramancer is one of them. Crystalline Cleric is one of them. Any sort of archer can do reliable damage of both types because of the elemental arrows, which scale with finesse. I really like playing multiple damage type characters. I think it's just more fun, and it just gives you a lot more variety of what you can do. So we actually have another clip from level 16 in the other area where I normally have been showcasing the gameplay, which I'm just going to throw in here because I don't want to waste it. Again, this is back before they fixed the deflective barrier, so keep that in mind. Everything else about the fight should be relatively the same, though. Okay, so again, you can see the enemies are kind of far away, so we'll go ahead and buff up with Deflect Barrier and Armor of Frost. And then I Phoenix Dive in to get next to the enemy in case he moves, so I can get an attack of opportunity. Phoenix Dive is not really the best jump skill for this build because it does fire, and obviously you're trying to create ice. You know, you can use Tactical Retreat or whatever, Cloak and Dagger, couldn't think of it. If you prefer, you just have to make sure that you have gear that gives you those bonuses. You don't want to spread your stat points around too thin, so it's better than nothing, but there's definitely better jump skills out there. Okay, on my turn, after I get teleported all over the freaking map, I go ahead and use Flesh Sacrifice to give me an extra AP. Then I just hit the melee guy there, and then use Battle Stomp to knock him and the mage down. This build is kind of similar to the Eternal Warrior in that, you know, you want to prioritize physical damage enemies, at least keeping them CC'd. You don't have to finish them if you can keep keeping them CC'd, but you know, you don't have a whole lot of ways to replenish physical armor. And enemies who deal damage to physical armor, they deal full damage, whereas, you know, you can resist elemental damage, and we have tons of ways to replenish it. Alright, on my turn, I'm completely surrounded. You know, you could probably use Whirlwind here, but I decided to go with Battering Ram to kind of get away. And then, once I get away, I set up kind of my safe space, if you will, by creating ice around me. So if those melee guys move over, hopefully they'll slip on the ice. It's kind of difficult to maintain ice later in the game, especially with cursed fireballs everywhere. But one of the things I added into my written guide that I didn't have in my video is that if you use Bless, it's not only does it, you know, buff you substantially, give you better resistances and dodge, but you can clear that status effect, use a global cooling, and you're right back, you know, to creating, you know, your safe space where enemies can't get to you. So you can see that even though I took a cursed fireball to the face, the ice extends past the fireball, so the enemies are not able to get to me. So I'm sitting in a good spot because I can heal up magic armor super easy. So taking magic damage is not, you know, that worrisome, and I would rather not take physical if I can avoid it. So I decide here to go ahead and Cloak and Dagger away. I'm sort of outrunning the enemies, kind of making them catch up to me, which is great because those melee guys don't really have a lot of AP, so they're going to waste them all moving. I'm trying to find clusters of enemies. There's a couple mage guys clustered over here, so I'll go ahead and leap over, go ahead and hit him with Whirlwind. Can't quite, CC anything, so I go ahead and use Crippling Blow, which I wouldn't normally recommend. You can see it doesn't hit the other guy, even though it really should in this scenario. End up getting the Executioner bonus here. And then I just go ahead and hit the other guy for an attack, which almost kills him, and I'm hoping that maybe he'll move on his turn, and I'll get an attack of opportunity and finish him. Well, that enemy over there was seriously fucking confused. I don't know what he was thinking, but he just attacked nothing, luckily for us. So I'm short on AP here, so I just go ahead and Phoenix Dive over to the guy, Mage here, get next to him. So if he moves, I get an attack of opportunity, and I used Armor of Frost to just give me some more magic armor. On my turn, I go ahead and use Deflective Barrier. Again, you wouldn't be able to do this now. And then I can't quite hit them both with Battle Stomp, so I prioritize the physical armor guy, mostly because, again, he can strip my physical armor, which, you know, I don't have a whole lot of ways of replenishing other than Bone Cage, which you saw earlier. And because he can knock me down, these guys can't, should he actually get through my armor. One nice thing about Battle Stomp there is you can see it clears that fire in that strip of wind through. So, if you're trying to create an ice area, and there's fire all over the place, and you don't have, rain up, you can always, use Battle Stomp when you're attacking an enemy to clear some space. So when you cast rain, it gets wet, which is great. Alright, on my turn, I go ahead and use Cleanse Wounds on the Undead Destroyer. Something I didn't showcase in the other two video clips was that the healing of the Frost Paladin can be used to deal, respectable damage to undead. It can critically strike if you have Savage Sortilege, which you probably won't have on this build, but on Crystalline Cleric, if you have a Savage Sortilege, it'll critically strike, which is, besides Hydrosophist, is really the only way to increase the damage, because Warfare doesn't increase the damage of it, even though it's physical. Then I go ahead and use Blitz Attack to hit both of them, kill the Undead Destroyer, and then just go ahead and plug the Mage there for an attack, and finish him off with an attack of opportunity on his turn. Okay, I Cloak and Dagger over to him, go ahead and Battering Ram him to knock him down. Then I use Global Cooling with my 1 AP. I don't really need to, but, it's a good practice to get in the habit of keeping ice around you, so if there are a lot of enemies, maybe one or maybe two slip and prevent you from taking damage, which is one of the bigger benefits of the Frost Paladin. And then I just go ahead and finish off the enemy there. So that's the Frost Paladin. I hope you've kind of seen what its strengths and weaknesses are. Again, I would recommend adding Bless to this, because for 1 AP, it really helps to keep your ice there. And you can see in these later fights I don't have Skin Graft, which would help to, let me reapply ice if my ice zone I got rid of, which you can take as well, which just makes it more powerful. But I didn't even need it in this fight. I'm not going to win any speed awards playing Frost Paladin for my DPS and my tactics, but you can see I used the strength of the build here to sort of maneuver appropriately for what was happening, and I was never really in any risk of dying. And, as I mentioned before, the Eternal Warrior is very compartmentalized and it's very self-sustaining, and it's good in a group or by itself. But the Frost Paladin is generally much better in a group, because healing, benefits everyone. Guardian Angel benefits everyone. You can play more of a role in assisting your party with healing, especially early on in the game. I mean, later in the game, ideally enemies aren't getting through your armor. But at the beginning of the game, that's really hard to do because you just have bad gear, and it's hard to find good gear, and it's really random. Sometimes you'll have great gear, sometimes you'll have really shitty gear. So that healing goes a long way, and skills like Cleanse Wounds that clear lots of negative effects are really good. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're going to be doing more of these until the console launch in August. Hopefully we'll have like all the builds that we've done covered by then. We're going to be doing Pillars of Eternity 2 here in the next week or two, probably even a little longer than that, and doing build guides for that, class guides. So if you like that sort of content with builds and classes, I think you'll see some good things with that as well.